Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. Today's episode is going to help you build your network and build your knowledge base so that your value proposition increases and people see you different than the typical real estate agent. Now, before I get into introducing today's guest and going into today's topic, I want to remind anybody that may be listening from outside of the Portland, Oregon market that I've got a network of amazing real estate agents that are big thinkers. That treat their clients amazingly well. If you're looking for one of those, I can be a great introduction for you to somebody who can help serve your clients here in this area. So please keep that in mind. Also, I want to remind you that if you want to get regular show updates, I know we put out a lot of content on the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. There's a great way for you to consume what matters to you, right? This is not the format of this is not designed to confuse you or distract you from what is important to you, but to give you the best knowledge and the best network out there. But with that, if you go to thinkbigger.realestate, you can sign up for a weekly review of all the shows that happen this week so that you can handpick the ones that are most relevant to you. So with that being said, I think today is going to be one of those. Especially, I'm privileged to have somebody here from the Portland, Oregon market. He's actually an attorney. I think anybody that knows me knows that I believe that the future of well-paid real estate agents is to act more like a high-paid professional, like an attorney, like a CPA, like a financial advisor, working at the highest level. Today's guest, again, is an attorney. He's an asset protection lawyer. His name is Brian T. Bradley. He actually lives in Wilsonville. His website is BTB, Brian T. Bradley, btblegal.com, in case you aren't able to catch the whole episode. Today, we're going to be talking about asset protection for yourself and for your clients. Keep in mind that the concept of this is number one, we're helping you build something great. And secondly, the more that's going to be expedited, the more you help your clients build something great. You're marketing not just yourself, but your network, as Brian has shared with me before. And so let's go ahead and welcome Brian onto the show. Thanks for taking a few minutes to share some really valuable insights about asset protection today with us, Brian.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Justin, for having me on and putting this whole podcast together. And it really is a confusing topic, and I hope I can add some value to your listeners. And like you just mentioned, we were talking before we started recording, it's not just a matter of what we can do for their clients. It's also a matter that they're trying to think big and grow themselves professionally. Asset protection is something they need to do for themselves also. So I think we're going to cover a lot of good material, and it's something they can take for themselves and also talk to their clients about.
I love it. I love it. Let's start here again for to provide some context for those that need to understand kind of Brian's breadth of knowledge. He was selected to be to the Lawyers of Distinction list in 2019, Super Lawyers Rising Star list in 2015, nominated to America's Top 100 High Stakes Litigators list, and as well as the 2017 Law Firm 500 Awards. So you're doing some great things. I know, Brian, like me, all of that pales in comparison to the work that you're doing at home. You shared with me you've got 2 young children, 1 and 3. Congratulations, you're awake for today's show.
Thank God. It's tiring. Two girls, 2 little princesses, and it's great.
So part of the Think Bigger Real Estate Show is to help people think bigger than real estate and realize where the true treasure in life is at. So I'd love to start with this question of what is your favorite part about being the dad of 2 little princesses?
Well, my favorite part is I'm really actively involved in my girls' lives. And so my wife works nights at a hospital. And so we missed the daycare ride. We didn't realize we had a 3-year waiting list out here in Oregon. And so I just created my business structure of my day to where I can spend most of my time with my girls. I take them to parks, dance, gymnastics. So I get to spend a lot of time with the girls. And if you combine that with, I'm Uber dad, basically. Just they're obsessed with me, and all the hugs and kisses and nail painting, can't get enough of.
That's so funny. At this point, and I've heard that at some point it stops, but as soon as the garage door opens, there's a full-on sprint from my house to my car with little blonde girls running to see who can give dad the first hug and the first kiss. And they say it, first hug, first kiss. And there's something about being a superhero to your own little girls that's pretty magical. So I appreciate you sharing that. I can totally relate. Yeah. Let's get into today's topic, asset protection. What is a key point that you think real estate agents need to know for their own business, as well as advising their clients, stepping in as a true advisor to their clients?
Yeah, so I think the key point at the end of the day is just what is asset protection. And the overall goal is just lifestyle preservation, creating peace of mind. And that comes down to just how to take risk off the table. So if you're a real estate agent and you're going out on your own, you have a business. So you need to protect that business and that business interest. And so that what you need to do is create an asset protection system through either business entities, or as you grow, ask different types of asset protection trusts or jurisdictions, exemptions, and make sure that if something were to happen, whether it be professionally or in your personal life, that you can sleep well at night knowing that you personally and your finances are protected. And so I think, what we're going to talk about today is how to incorporate that into their business going forward, their lives going forward, and their clients' lives.
I love it. So what are some key things that real estate agents need to be doing and or looking for in the lives of their clients?
Yeah, so I would say for themselves, I think that the conversation would be good for, they can use the same principles no matter what. And so I would say the first thing is, as you're building your empire or your business, is get on the phone with the lawyer and talk about, and your CPA, and say, what business structure, what business entity should I be using to protect myself and maximize my taxes? That would be number one. Start building your network. And if you can start taking more hats off of your head, you're going to free up more time and you're going to start working more efficiently and effectively. So the idea is just, if you want to go kind of like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is you don't want to be spending all your time doing everything yourself. So if you can start taking little pieces of the pie, and divvying them up to free up your time and using experts, do it. Go get a good attorney. Go get a good real estate attorney. Go get a good asset protection attorney. Go get good, agents to work with, and then start freeing up your time to do what you're good at. And if you want to break down some of these specific, some of the tools in the toolbox we have, we can go into that. Or
let's do it. Let's go granular. Teach us some more tools in the toolbox.
Yeah. So I would say, the first thing is, especially as owning a business, is maximizing exemptions. And so this is kind of where we start, and you can look at it as exemption planning is the main staple because it's a legal right. And so if you own a business or you're owning real estate, you're investing, whatever it is, we first start and maximize both state and federal exemptions. And the reason is just because, like I said, these are rights under the law. They're automatically protected if they qualify. And so exemptions are going to vary state by state. I think a good place to start with this understanding would be like Florida homestead exemptions. Just because I think everybody kind of understands what homestead exemptions are, especially in the real estate world. And so, for example, in Florida, your home, regardless of its value, is going to be absolutely protected from creditors so long as it's contained within 1/4 of an acre. So that's a basic concept of a homestead. And then different exemptions are going to vary state by state. For example, California has horrible exemption laws. Oregon, we have horrible exemption laws. But one thing I really want to break down is a specific California exemption. And the reason I want to go into this is because California is just like a litigation hellhole. It's rated the #1, litigious state and hellhole, I think like 5 years in a row. And no one knows about this exemption because it's not taught much. And I think that all California residents should understand what they have in their own state to protect themselves. And so they have what's called a private retirement plan. And this was codified under CCP section 704.115 way back in the 70s. And so it's been around for a long time, over 40 years, with 40 years of case law that's really favorable for it. And what this does is all assets that qualify to be placed into this protection trust is then going to be deemed exempt. And so when you're talking about adding value for your listeners, with just exemption planning, over the last 24 months, by working with the trust administrators that we have, we've been able to protect over $600 million in assets and save over $45 million in taxes. And so this is partly where the add value and return on investment of this comes from. And we can also protect business interests. So that was kind of like, a good way to relate to your listeners of, all right, maybe I don't have all these, real estate investments myself, but you do have a business, and that business has equity and is growing. And so we can actually even protect the future value of the business or future value of real estate investments that you have. These plans are tax neutral, so you can invest in whatever you want. If you have to live off the cash flow, we can make these plans and structure them for distributions that actually meet your current lifestyle. So they're really flexible in how to use, and they actually have a return value on them.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I think all real estate agents would be wise to take the advice that Gary Keller once shared, which was he sells the homes that he can't buy himself. And I think when you come into any sort of real estate type business, you realize that I'm on the front lines of identifying where great opportunities are at. And I think when you realize that I'm not here long term just to facilitate the buy and sell of other people's properties, but I'm actually here to build long-term passive income for myself, you start to think a little bit bigger. You start to think a little bit differently. And then you start to say, okay, what is the infrastructure that I'm going to need in order to be able to be acquiring properties to the point to where at some point I don't have to work. I may continue to want to work and I may continue to do that, but I don't have to work. And I appreciate what you're saying, because I think sometimes when people think small, right, they never see themselves of actually being on the other side of the transaction repeatedly. They see themselves only ever getting enough deals to get by or to build a business themselves, not actually step into the quadrant of being an investor. And I think when you start to have conversations like the one that you're having to say, I'm going to get educated on what the exemptions are, what the best business structures are, and whether or not you want to build a massive real estate team, right? Some do, some don't. I think building a portfolio of real estate investment ought to be a priority of all of us, regardless of industry and regardless of our station in life. That being close to the real estate industry, as we all are, that's one of the fringe benefits that we can that we can not take advantage of if we're not careful, right? That we'll miss if we're not careful.
Yeah, and the great thing about investing in real estate is it's always one of the safest investments, even in economic times. Yeah, you're going to have your ups and downs with it, but land is limited. So at the end of the day, there's only so much of it. So that's why it's always, I personally like, real estate as investments. But, as we're talking about quadrants, I think whether you want to be a small real estate agent or firm, or you want to grow and big and transition into, efficiency and self-reliance, you got to then, if you're switching quadrants, you got to then build a team and a network around you and stop just thinking about the next deal. And like you said, think larger, think bigger. But as you're thinking larger and thinking bigger, you then also have to think, oh, I'm opening up myself from liability and different angles of risk. And I have to start managing my risk better. I have to start managing liability better. And so, yeah, you want to transition, quadrants from being an employee or self-employed to a business owner, and investor. And so as you're doing that, you also need more. And so that comes into play of just how to build a business and also how to manage clients and recognizing clients' needs even before those clients know what those are.
Yeah. Think big, act small, right? Think big in the sense that you're putting these things in place, educating yourself on the different exemptions, on the different business structures, getting the infrastructure in place that you need now, yet realizing that you can build and need to be prepared to build a bigger empire on top of that. And I think what happens when agents start to think that way and start to associate with people like you and get educated on these things, even get their own business set up in properly, as well as be aware of the exemptions and all the different opportunities and risks that are out there, is that the conversation when you sit down at a listing appointment is very, very different. Rather than just saying, let's look at your house, let's look at comps, let's look at your neighborhood, the conversation starts to go to, tell me about your business, tell me what you do for a living, and naturally you're going to have more to offer in that conversation. I think some people shy away from those conversations because they don't know where it's going to go. That's like, oh, that's nice. I bet that's a nice place to work. And that's where it ends. Whereas if they've been, tuning into the Think Bigger Real Estate Show, if they've been around people like you, Brian, some of the things that they can learn from someone like you will start to show up. They might be able to say, it's interesting. I was listening just yesterday to an attorney. His name is Brian T. Bradley. And he helps people, pursue their business and avoid risks and take advantage of the best exemptions. One that stood out to me is this, insert in what you just shared with us. And all of a sudden that client sitting on the other side of the listing appointment and, or even just the newsletters that you're sending out have a flair of being more than just a customer service representative or a salesperson there to help market and sell your home, which again.
Yeah. And what we like to do is, the biggest thing for us is educating clients, but I'd look at it differently, and I forget where I read it from, but if you look at it as a pie, you want to educate yourself, not on the things you don't know. I mean, everybody has not, you don't know what you don't know, but you can go get that answer. And like, I know I don't know X, Y, Z, so I can go ask that question. But what we try to do is educate clients on what they don't know that they don't even know yet. And because most people have the largest amount of their pie in that category, we don't know what we don't even know. So we try to shrink that part of the pie down and then limit the risk on that. And it's amazing, like we said, like on exemptions, or, we can go into, false securities that people have. Like, everyone should have insurance, but you can't just solely rely on insurance. And there's reasons why, and then how to pick jurisdictions to protect their trust in, which would be other good tidbits for your listeners. But little things like that I didn't even know about that, and I didn't even think about that. And so as we can shrink that part of the pie down, you can start making better decisions as you grow.
Yeah, I love it. Talk to us. Let's just take maybe a couple more tips, like you just had kind of offered up, one in each one of those categories, and then we'll wrap up and be sure people know how to get a hold of you so that they can continue to educate themselves. Yeah.
So I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is about insurance, and so it's a very big hot topic. And I think insurance is a great place to start. Business insurance, real estate insurance, rental insurance, all of it. But it's not the end. You can't stop there. And I see a lot of clients that have this false sense of security, thinking, oh, if I get sued, I can just magically rely on my insurance to cover everything and all the damages. And this is just not the case. But I do recommend, like I said, every single person to get insurance, have it, get as much as you can, maybe even an umbrella policy. But read your insurance policy, read the fine print. And I always ask everybody, like if I'm in a group of conference, like in person, everybody raise your hand who read the fine print of your insurance policy. No one's going to raise their hand. And so no one's ever going to understand what's not covered and what the actual claim limit is. And so a good place to start is to actually just first understand that, real estate law is the most heavily litigated area of law that there is. There's so many different ways to get sued, and as well as owning a business. And so it's not a matter of when, but it's a matter of what condition you're going to be in to defend yourself when a lawsuit comes your way. And that's really what we're talking about with asset protection and business in general. It's being proactive and being prepared before anything comes your way. And so just keep in mind that insurance companies, they're not going to cover you for fraud or punitive damages or intentional wrongdoings. And they don't pay claims that are going to be the direct results of unlawful acts. And so what really your listeners on this topic need to walk away with is just what insurance defense actually is. And it's that you can be sued if your business owner, is likely going to happen, or if you're owning real estate and renting, it's probably going to happen. And from the very first statement or communication that you ever made, or an email that you sent at any point in time, those are then going to be deemed as intentional acts because they're statements. And so the courts are going to say that email, that statement, even though it had nothing to do with, a pending litigation or lawsuit, is now going to be an intentional act. And the way this plays out with insurance is that they're going to say, oh, okay, well, now we're not going to cover you for potential wrongdoings that were from intentional acts. And if you think we're wrong, go ahead and sue us. And so that's how that game is played, and how they have built-in wiggle rooms and ways out of paying large claims. And so just understand, insurance helps, but it's just not going to be good enough. And so the next thing you need to do is create protection systems. If your money's tight, start with an LLC. As you grow, you're going to need more. Start maximizing exemptions. As you start growing even more, then you're going to get into what I'd like to quickly cover is picking a jurisdiction to set up asset protection trust in. You want to jump into that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So that's the next big topic is, or the next big step is, all right, I started out small. I had my LLC. I outgrew that. I have too much, or I'm growing really fast. I don't want to keep accelerating multiple LLCs because it's just going to become, a management nightmare.
At what point would somebody outgrow an LLC? Is there a dollar figure? Is there a quantity of entities?
It's a great question. And I would say it's really state dependent. Like if you're in California, for example, I always say about $1 million, because then you need to divvy up and spread out the risk into another LLC. Mm-hmm. In California, that would never work though, because it's so expensive. I mean, most of the properties are more than $1 million. So you can't, just say I'm going to put it one property into one LLC, one business and one business. It's just going to be too expensive. But the rule of thumb generally I go with is 1 million, we need to start having a conversation. When you get to 3.5 million, you're at that level to where one lawsuit can completely wipe you out. And it's going to be really hard to recover from. And it took you a very long time to get to that point. So we need to start talking about what I do is, higher level of protection, strategic planning, and start maximizing exemptions, creating new buckets, and recharacterizing assets into different buckets. And then from there, once you get to about that, 5 million beyond mark, or if there's something that can't be exempt called excess planning, that's when we start going into picking jurisdictions. So, and the reason also is because once you get to about $5 million, you're now going to most likely be an accredited investor. You're going to have more. You're going to be a larger mark. You're going to be investing in, probably some syndications or deals that other people just don't get access to.
Right.
And so now you're going to accelerate your wealth a lot faster and at a higher rate. So you actually need a system that can actually grow with you and not just be passive. And so that's the other reason why.
I love it.
Yeah. And so after maxing out exemptions, like I was saying, picking a jurisdiction to set your protection system up in is going to be the next big issue, no matter, what state you live in, or no matter what, if you're a business owner or a real estate investor or both. And what jurisdiction means is that the laws and the rules that govern you and trust and business entities are going to be different from one jurisdiction to another, from one state to another, one country to another. And so you really have two options when we're looking at picking a jurisdiction to create asset protection trust in. You can create them domestically in the US, for example, like in Nevada, or you can set them up offshore in another country like the Cook Islands. I personally prefer the power of just going offshore if and when it's ever needed. And it's simply because it's the best home court advantage that you can have. It makes lawsuits go away very fast or quickly. It gets cases to settle for pennies on the dollar. And even against what we call super creditors, like the government, the IRS, the SEC, the man, who have an infinite amount of money, when they try to go after you in the Cook Islands, they're going to come to the negotiating table really fast. And that's because of the power of going offshore. And so the power of the Cook Islands is they have what's called statutory non-recognition of another jurisdictional court orders. So they're just going to go tell any court order here in the US that they're trying to enforce in the Cook Islands. They're just going to say, we don't care, go pound sand. And they're going to have to retry that whole case in the Cook Islands, which is exceptionally hard to do. Like they'd have to prove a case by the murder standard beyond a reasonable doubt. They'd have to front all the court costs and fly in a judge from New Zealand. If whoever loses pays, and so trying to prove a civil case beyond a reasonable doubt, good luck. So they're going to end up paying the legal fees. And there's a statute of limitations of only 1 year. And so before they even realized they had to sue you in the Cook Islands, it's most likely already ran and they missed their chance to swing at the ball. And there's pros and cons to this though. The pros is statutory non-recognition. 5 out of 5 stars. You can't get better than that. But there's other 3 factors that you have to take into consideration: cost, control, and compliance. And so when you go offshore, those, the control you're going to give up to a third-party trust administrator in the Cook Islands, the costs are going to be a lot higher to be purely foreign, and the compliance, you're going to have to file additional disclosures with the IRS. We only do have about 5% of our clients that actually need to go this extreme. For most people, it's just going to be overkill. And if we walk it back and compare this domestically, domestic asset protection trust, they're going to be cheaper on cost. They're going to be easier to maintain, so they'll be less expensive, but they fail on effectiveness. And they fail because of what the foundation of asset protection really is. It's really about not recognizing another jurisdictional court orders. But the hallmark of the US legal system is the Constitution, and we have the full faith and credit clause. So this means, like in the US, you just can't hide from judgments. And you shouldn't have to run and hide from fair judgments, but a lot of lawsuits are predatory or just completely excess damage judgments. And so when you're weighing this out, okay, what do I pick? Which way do I go? The weakness of domestic, the power and strength and expense of offshore. I say for the 95% of you who don't have to go purely offshore, you pick neither. We use what's called a bridge trust, and it's really a hybrid of a domestic and a foreign asset protection trust, and we're just combining the best of both worlds. It was created 30 years ago, so it's not something that's new. We just use the word bridge to demonstrate how we're using a foreign trust and then connecting 2 countries together with a bridge. And then we just cross the bridge to the safety of the Cook Islands if and when you're ever under attack. And then when the attack is over, we move the assets back. And so for all your high level, like real estate investors, people like to know a little bit of the detail about it. The bridge trust is a grantor trust. And so this means that you, the person creating it, the creator, the settler, you retain some of the power. And then like all asset protection trusts, they're self-settled spendthrift trusts, meaning they're self-settled by you, for you as your own beneficiary. And then the win-win or value add for using this system, for the purpose of your IRS reporting and disclosures, your bridge trust is actually going to be considered domestic and not foreign. And that's because we drafted to meet a specific requirement under USC section 7701, the court test and control test. And we care about this because of IRS tax purposes and filings. You don't have to file those foreign disclosures. But then for protection and purposes, now you have the strength of the Cook Islands in your back pocket. So you get the benefit of both, the ease and simplicity of domestic with the power and strength of the Cook Islands at a more affordable cost.
It's powerful stuff, Brian. I'm sure you could go on for days and we'd probably all be super impressed by how much you know and how well you're able to help your clients protect themselves. I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to either go back and listen again, or maybe even forward this and in fact, I'll invite you to do this. After this show, on my website, thinkbigger.realestate, on the videos section, there will be a transcription of everything that Brian's saying here. And this stuff is going to, I would encourage you to review some of the things that he's talking about here. Because again, as you move from sales representative or salesperson, customer representative to advisor, having somebody like Brian in your network is powerful. But it's difficult to even know how and when to introduce someone like Brian unless you can have a few talking points about how people can protect themselves. And so having, again, a few of these talking points, you can copy and paste from my website and memorize yourself and to where you know what to look for when you're working with high net worth individuals. Even if they already have these things in place, you being able to kind of run in that race is going to elevate your status in their eyes. It's going to elevate the value proposition that you can bring to them.
Well, a good question for them on that point is if they already have this in place, do you have a trust administrator? That's another good question for them to ask. And we can talk about that some other point.
I love that. That's a great lead in. Do you have a trust administrator? If they say yes or no, what's a great way to get them back to you, Brian? Is there some way that if they say yes, then what does the real estate agent say?
Oh, no, that's great. They don't need it in. I just want to make sure that if you have an asset protection trust, some people just think that they can manage it themselves. Don't manage it themselves. The trust administrators do the annual compliance. They make sure that you're finding missing dollars, missed tax benefits, missed tax returns. So that's how you get to add value back into these systems they pay for themselves.
I love it. And that's how the wealthy continue to get wealthy, is by having superior knowledge to be able to properly protect themselves and take advantage of the legal, ins and outs of our laws. So I appreciate you sharing and helping all of us elevate our conversation, help us to think bigger. Final question of the show, Brian, which is obviously you're a big thinker. You help some people solve some pretty important problems and prevent important problems from even ever showing their face. What does a guy like you continue to do to be a big thinker, continue to do to expand your own possibilities?
I'm a nerd. I love reading, and I try to create. Coming from the courtroom, I'm always busy. So I really got, once I had my girls, I'm like, I need to free up time. So I realized I have to be a business owner, a senior managing partner in my practice. I can't just be pounding nails. I have to give up some of the ego, I guess, of having to always be the one doing everything. And I created a system. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, I would say. As you're growing, as you're thinking big, you're used to doing it all yourself. You're going to collapse if you're going to do it all yourself. You'll fail utterly bad. You're going to make bad decisions. Create a team, get a system going, systemize your business, go pick up Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant, for a good read on how to do that. Just principles wise. Create a system, manage a system, spend more time with your family, and still make money.
I love it. Yeah, one of my favorite parts of that book that's really been a driver to me helping real estate agents improve their value proposition is where he talks about everybody needs to have a team around them, right? They need to have a real estate professional. They need to have a CPA. They need to have a tax advisor. They need to have an attorney, multiple attorneys. And so I think what you're saying there is an absolute way for somebody to elevate their own game by saying, every one of my clients that comes to me, I'm going to evaluate to see who's missing on their team. And I've got my team in place to help fill those gaps when needed. Exactly. So,
and we do the same thing, and that's where it comes in. You're missing this, you're not maximizing value, and you're not maximizing your time to do what you're good at.
Yeah, I love it. Great stuff, man. I want to thank you, Brian, for pouring into our show today, and end with this final charge to everybody listening, which Brian has helped us to do through his superior knowledge and generosity and really sharing so freely. But hold on, before I do that, Brian, I want to put up your website here on the show, and it is btblegal.com. I want to put that up on the screen for any that are watching.
Yeah, we have a free diagnostic on there. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. And I do free consultations with that diagnostic because I'd rather have people just have access to the information and do what you want with it.
I love it. I love it. Truly a generous man, which is a great sign of truly being a big thinker. So with that, again, I want to give this final charge to everybody. 3 simple words: go think bigger. Thank you, Brian, so much for joining us today and for being so valuable to all of us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.